podcast. Revelers, this is Off the Rails, Right versus Left, the podcast that we do because we think the left is evil. I'm Rob B.
And I'm Brad Lee.
And I'm Brian G.
And we are Off the Rails, Right versus Left. Again, we're doing this show because we think everybody needs to know that the left is evil.
Classic.
Welcome, Revelers. I'm Rob B, and I'm revisiting a topic that we covered in one of our previous podcasts, and that is the true history of Israel and Palestine. It really begins almost 3,300 years ago with the establishment of the Canaanite tribes in the areas that's now Israel, parts of Syria, Jordan, that whole area was all Canaanites. Okay. And we can even follow this up with the Bible, which most of the Bible's history is backed up with other sources from neighboring civilizations and what have you. So we started out around then, and then around 1900 is where Abraham had his two sons, who ended up spawning the lines that ended up becoming the Hebrews and the Arabs. Okay. So the Arabs kind of spread to the east, and the people that ended up becoming the Hebrew people stayed in the land of Canaan. And they ended up in Abraham's time, they fled to Egypt during famine, and periodically there was subjugation through between around 2000 and 1300. There was subjugation under Egypt, and they were kind of vassals. The tribal leaders were vassals of the Egyptian Empire. And then around 1300, you had Moses and the Exodus from Egypt. And this ended up leading to Jacob and the 12 tribes of Israel. So when we look at the conquered lands of Canaan, that became the area of the 12 tribes of Israel, this is what we actually have. Okay. Now, before I drop down this, I want to tell you this is our sponsor, Dubby Energy Drinks. If you're tired of spending $4 a drink for energy drinks, you can go ahead and visit www.dubby.com and enter our promo code RTWRVL at checkout, and you'll get 20% off, and it'll help sponsor what we're doing here. And of course, we do appreciate your support. And they do also have caffeine-free options. If you don't like the feeling of caffeine driven energy drinks, they have options without the caffeine as well. So let's get this out of the way so we can take a close look at the map. Now, Jacob, also known as Israel, his 12 sons ended up running the 12 tribes of Israel. And they run all the way from the Aramite Empire, the Ammonite Empire, the Moabite Empire, and the Edom Empire. And then down on the other end, obviously, is Israel, or is Egypt. Okay. So this was the original, all this area was the original kingdom of Israel under King Saul. Well, first the biblical judges, and then King Saul, King David, King Solomon, and from all the way from 1250 BC to 930 BC. And that's when this happened. and the kingdom of Israel and the kingdom of Judah split. So that's Judah and Samaria. Okay. So they were in control for another 400 years as the two kingdoms before the Neo-Assyrian Empire came in. Ooh. Oh, I did want to show this here. This was the kingdom of Israel in its entirety. And this little part right here, Philistia, this is the name that the Romans would later adapt to Palestina, and they would call all of Israel Syria and Palestina as kind of a snub of their nose to the Israelis, because that was the Philistines were the Hebrews' historical enemies. So this little area, keep that in mind. Okay, so then the Assyrian Empire between 900 and 607 slowly but surely took over a lot of this. And then around 606, then the Babylonians started going in and taking control. And the Bible actually gives us a good look at all the stuff that happened under the Babylonian control as well. And then basically all of this flipped over and became part of the Persian Empire. And after the Babylonians had exiled the Jews starting in 597 BC, they were allowed to start returning under the Persian Empire around 539. So this was still the kingdom of Israel. They just didn't have a king because they had been conquered. Okay. Now, their existence under the Persian Empire went on until about 330 BC. And in 330 BC, Alexander the Great conquered Jerusalem and got the surrender. And this ended up being the Macedonian Empire under Alexander the Great. So he ended up basically conquering the entire Persian Empire, the Egyptian Empire, basically just skipped over the Arabian Peninsula entirely, but went all the way through what was Greece, Turkey, Syria, Israel, all the way down to Egypt. Okay. Now, as the Macedonian Empire started to fail, we had another surging empire. So just when it looked like the Jews were going to be able to retake their homeland, instead, the Romans came in and conquered it. So, or not the Romans. Yeah, the Romans. The Romans took over after the Greeks. So now we got the Roman Empire that going from like 14 AD, they started conquering through here, and then they expanded their holdings here. And basically, they had ended up reconquering everything that Alexander the Great had conquered. Okay. So this fast forwards all the way through, obviously, it went all the way through until I guess it was around 150 BC that Rome took it, and then it continued on going on, and then they started having wars between the Jews and the Romans, and they ended up getting scattered and killed by the perpetual Roman empires that came after that, eventually leaving on to the Byzantine Empire, which started out like this, but then began retracting. Now, 565, this was all under control of the Byzantine Empire. And then at some point over the next 50 years, they began getting conquered, I believe. Let's see, it's around 622. Muhammad began expanding through these areas. And he took over most of the Arabian Peninsula. And then the first caliphs after him expanded all the way through 661 to where they got most of North Africa, pretty much all of Persia, Iraq, and basically up to what's currently Turkey. Okay. Now, what happened to the caliphates? And you'll notice they got all the way over here to Spain even. That's why there's a huge Muslim population in Spain. Now, you get over here, and what happened to basically all of Asia at the time was the Mongol Empire. And they conquered almost the entirety of Asia here. They didn't quite get to Israel, but the pressure that they put on weakened the caliphates considerably. So then the Ottoman Empire around 1300 started expanding out. And you can see by the time you get to 1500, they already controlled all of Israel, Egypt, a big chunk of the Arab Peninsula, including Mecca and Medina. So all of this at the same time. All of the sultans were controlling all of that. So, and of course, you can see how huge the Ottoman Empire was by the time it ended. Now, what ended the Ottoman Empire? World War I. They ended up joining in with the Austro-Hungarian Empire and the Russian Empire and the German Empire, and went to war with Italy and France and England, and started pulling in all these other countries and territories, and kind of started expanding. Now, under the Ottoman Empire, around 1880, the Jews began buying back their land in their historic homeland and expanding what were already Jewish settlements that existed there, but they were expanding them under the Ottoman Empire. Now, the Ottoman Empire officially fell in 1917 at the end of World War I, and then you ended up with the British Mandate, French Mandate, and the French ended up with basically what's now Lebanon and Syria, and they split them up because Lebanon was mostly Christian and Syria was mostly Muslim. You can see here's the Jordan River, so this is all Jordan. So the British created Jordan, and this is where Israel will end up existing. Okay, now from basically 1880 on, the Jews are beginning to return. They're being freed from their enslavement around the world, and many of them are leaving and returning home. And they received emancipation in England in 1858 and Hungary in 1867. And then the Russian Zionist group ended up founding more settlements in their original homeland in 1870 through 1890 in the area that was under the Ottoman Empire. Because the Jews and the Arabs still considered themselves to be mostly family at that point. There wasn't quite as much hatred and vitriol until this happened. And this was the partition plan for Palestine. Now, the idea of the partition went all the way from World War I to World War II. It was discussed at great length in like 1917. England vowed to return the Jews to their homeland. And then we know what happened in the 30s and 40s. The Holocaust happened. So after the end of World War II, the UN ended up passing the partition plan, and this is what it would have ended up looking like. So the Philistines or Palestinians would have controlled this, and the Palestinians would have controlled this and this. But in 1948, when Israel declared statehood, that's when England officially withdrew from the area, and then it was kind of 100% on the Jews to figure out what they were going to do. At this point, there had been basically nonstop wars in the area of the British Mandate of Palestine. So in 1948, May 14th, the state of Israel declared itself as an independent state, basically redeclaring their statehood that they had 1,000 years before. So they were returning to their homeland. Okay. Now, this was the original area that they declared. That was part of this map calls it historic Palestine. I bring it up because this was the area that was referred to as Syrian Palestina since the Roman Empire. Okay. And this is the map that the UN partition plan had. And again, this here was supposed to all go to the Palestinians. Now, if you remember that map I showed you early on, this is the area where the Philistine tribes had their cities. Not this part, not this part. Just this part. Okay? They didn't have any of this, and they didn't have any of this. All this was lands that was conquered by one empire after another, but it was all part of the kingdom of Israel. Okay? But the Jews accepted this because they just wanted peace and they wanted their homeland. Okay? So then what happened? Everybody declared war on them, and they ended up basically in control of all of it. And they gave this to the Palestinians after the 1967 war, when everybody attacked them again. Okay, so this time you can see that the area has shrunken down. Gaza has been shrunken down. This northern part's completely gone up here in Galilee, which, I mean, we all remember Jesus and the Sea of Galilee and all of that. So obviously that was part of Israel way back in biblical times. Okay. And then all of this was basically taken over because weapons kept getting smuggled in to the Palestinians from that side. And that was how they were able to like secure that side of them. So weapons weren't getting in as frequently. Okay. So if you look at the actual map and how those changes took place, you can kind of see like all of this was Palestine. And then the 1967 war, this was all taken away. And after the 67 war, it shrank down even more. And the Israelis took this back. Okay. But mind you, this is again their homeland that they are sharing with the Palestinian people. So the Philistines, the historical originators of the name, were from this little area here. The Arabs and the Hebrews, the Jews, the Israelis, they were all here. They were all Canaanites. But all of this was the kingdom of Israel, and none of it was ever any sort of nation of Palestine. There'd never been a nation of Palestine. There's never been a nation of Palestine. And if they don't stop with the terroristic acts, they're never going to have a nation of Palestine. And this is why. The Jews are not going to tolerate sharing their homeland with somebody who keeps attacking them. If they want to have a state, Israel's willing to do it in an effort to make peace. But no matter what offer they give to make peace, they get attacked again. So that's the true history of Israel. and their interactions with the, quote, Palestinian people. So it's not quite the history lesson that they try and teach when they're saying from the river to the sea. They're talking about killing every Jew because this is the river and this is the sea. Palestine will be free. There's no Palestine. There is not a single map that ever had a nation of Palestine, but there are 2,000 years of maps that have the kingdoms of Israel. So that's the real history. I hope you guys found it informative. Again, if you want to help us out, would really appreciate it if you guys go ahead and head over to www.w.com, enter our promo code RTWRVL at checkout, and you can get energy drinks as cheap as $1 per drink instead of going to the store and spending $4 a drink. So thanks as always for watching, and thanks for supporting us. Have a great day.